Thank you all for joining us for this morning's webinar. My name is Elizabeth, and I support Iasa as an event and marketing coordinator. Also joining us on the call today are our hosts, Tom Thomas and Scott Whitmire. They're both very important figures here at Iasa. Tom serves as the chair for the Board of Education. He's also an Iasa instructor and the vice president of the Puget Sound chapter. And Scott is also an Iasa instructor and the vice chair of the Board of Education. Thank you both for joining us this morning. We're really excited to have you both on speaking with us on the future of information architecture. We hope that everyone enjoys the presentation today. The session is being recorded and will be available on the Iasa website by the end of the day. We'll go ahead and send everyone an email letting you know where to find it. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Scott and Tom, and we can dive in and get started.
Perfect. Thanks, Elizabeth. Just one minor change there. I'm actually the chair of the Board of Chapters and Membership. And Scott's on our Board of Education side. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone that's taken the time to join us this morning, afternoon, and evening. We look forward to your questions and comments as we work through the presentation. And let's get this started. So our agenda for today is we're going to just do a very brief review of architecture fundamentals. From there we'll dig into an introduction on what data, information, and knowledge are to kind of level the playing field for our further discussions. Because as we know, there can be a lot of religious debates over what exactly is information architecture and what isn't it. So we want to just level that field a little bit. From there we'll go into the value of the information architect as we see it, the skills and roles that it takes to be an information architect, some of the more fun and controversial topics, what's the hardest trends in the industry, and last but not least we'll wrap up on what's the future of the profession and how you can grow your career. So jumping straight into our review of architecture fundamentals, what is architecture? Architecture comes to many people as many different things, and it's definitely open up for dispute to a lot of different people as to what exactly it is. But in general, in high-level speak, architecture, it's user experience, it's negotiating and bargaining, it's having those difficult conversations to make sure that we understand what the customer's looking for and champion for their needs. It's the technology behind actual solutions being implemented. It's the form of what we do. It's the communication with the stakeholders, the shareholders, the internal customers, the external customers. It's artful, it's science, it's agile. It's ultimately the creation of a better world. As SEI puts it, it's essentially can be defined as the structure or structures of the system which compromise software elements, the externally visible properties of those elements, and the relationships among them. So what we want you to do when we're talking about architecture today is don't just think about design, because architecture isn't just design. There's so much more to it. Do you agree, Scott?
Yes, I do. In particular, if you practice Agile, what they refer to as architecture, we typically don't include that as architecture. That's mostly design is what they're referring to. You're talking about detail elements, detail connections. We're talking about the gross shape or the macro shape of the formed by the software-based components or the information components of a system.
And to keep in mind, when we're talking about architecture, we're talking about the whole system. We're not talking about a component or one little piece either. We're talking about the big picture, everything working together in unison. So what's Iasa's definition of architect? Again, just to level some fields here, make sure we're all on the same page. Because as we know, every organization attaches a different title to what an architect is. Many of us may have a lead developer title, may have a software manager title, may have an EA title, information architect. Regardless of the title, that doesn't make you an architect. What makes you an architect is what you do. So again, Iasa's definition is they're developers that understand the business. They're business people that understand technology. They're network and system specialists that have a sense for what the business is while being able to apply that into an infrastructure view of the world. It's also really any IT person, whether it's operations or any other title they may have slapped you with, who bridges the gap between the business and technology. And in a nutshell, what we're calling an architect, regardless of what your organization may have titled you as, is the technology strategist for the business. It's the people that are aligning problems with technological solutions that actually solve the intent at hand, not just slap something together so you can have something out there you can say kind of solves a problem. Again, architects don't kind of solve problems. Our goal is to dig deep, understand the true intent of where our consumers are trying to go, and then map the best technological solutions to that intent. That's architecture. Anything to add to that, Scott?
Nope, that's pretty good.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to get into the heart of today's topic, so.
Yes, we're almost there. A couple more slides and we're straight into the good stuff. So key concerns of an architect, again, is the whole system design and integrity. It's alignment with the business. It's the strategy, the environment, the customers. And it's the system evolution. It's the architectures are long-lived. They're a blueprint for implementing strategy. It's the ability to evolve and not be stuck with a deck of cards that's going to collapse. So that's roughly what architecture is. Let's talk about data, information, and knowledge as our last leveling of the playing field. Data, in a nutshell, is the raw material. Too many people use the word too broadly for everything and anything. So data, when we talk about it, really is the lowest level of abstraction to derive information and knowledge from. It's the raw data. It's the uncompressed data. It's the collections of ones, zeros, binary images. It's all the stuff that doesn't have meaning yet, but has been collected and stored someplace. Now, when we take data and we transform it into a context that has meaning, or we've added sequence to the symbols, now we're starting to create information. So again, the difference between data and information is data is just a bunch of ones, zeros, facts collected and stored somewhere. Information is taking that and transforming it into something that's actually usable and consumable rather than just a pile of stuff. Now, knowledge, on the other hand, is when we've taken information, spread it throughout the organization, and everyone is bought into what it actually is. And there's an important differentiator. Information means it's ready to be consumed. Knowledge means it's been consumed, it's been shared, it's being spread around the organization. And as IAs, as information architects, this is where we really start helping the organization, is by taking that data and carrying it up the stack through information into knowledge so everyone can get their hands onto it. So let's cut right to the chase here for what all you guys are here for. Let's talk about the value of information architects. So by definition, the dictionary definition of value is the worth of something in terms of the amount of other things for which it can be exchanged or in terms of some medium of exchange. And by definition, information equates to the knowledge communicated or received concerning a particular fact or circumstance. So what's important to understand about this when we're talking about information architecture? One of the key things that every information architect needs to understand is information is everywhere inside the business. And if you remove it, there's nothing left, literally. It empowers the facts. It removes the guesses and the assumptions. It's the market research, the logistics, the advertising, the inventory, the quantity, the location, the turn time to restocking, the processes, the procedures, the intellectual property. Every decision we make is based on information, whether we want to accept that or not. Whether the information's been read, it's been seen, it's been heard, whether we help create it, every single drop of it influences the decisions we make. In most cases, the better the information, the better the decisions we can make. And with many things, there may be a little luck in regards to the outcome, but if we make our decisions based on facts, we are more than likely to get results as intended and as expected. That's what architecture is. It's going beyond delivered on time and as intended, and delivering on time as intended and to the actual problem at hand rather than the perceived problem at hand. So again, if you removed all the information in the company, what was left? Technically not much. But before you go have a cow on the ear, bear with me for just a second. Information is at the core of every single business, whether we choose to embrace it or not. Some businesses embrace it more than others, but the information is still there at the core. Again, market research, logistics, processes, advertising, inventory, quantity, and location, turn time to restock are all examples of information. And if the information is taken for granted and it's not supporting the business to grow, mature, and profit to its full potential, then you're not doing your value as an IA. So what do you think, Scott? Am I missing anything here in terms of how valuable information is to the organization as an IA?
No. The only thing I would add is that Jamie Dimon, who runs J.P. Morgan Chase, one time said that all a bank is information, and that was, you know, he was meant that literally.
And so as IAs, what we want you to be thinking about as we're going through this presentation this morning, as we head into the hot topics and trends and the fun stuff, is everything we do has information involved. And when we start applying that information to strategy, and we start talking about how to use information in terms of strategy, now we can start thinking outside the box. Because information allows decision makers to create evolutionary advancements before the competitors do. And that's a very key thing. Again, when we empower the organization with information, and we make it available, and we feed the process, everyone wins. The business wins, the consumer wins, the domains we work in are further advanced. Unfortunately, if we don't collect that information, or worse, if we collect it and don't use it for a wide variety of reasons, we get stuck in that classic, we've always done it this way mentality, and we're going to have a negative business impact. So that's where we started with data versus information. One thing we want to be very cognizant as information architects, we're not DBAs. We're not business analysts. We're not process creators. We're architects. We go far above and beyond just modeling. Now, it's important to keep in mind, when we're using information as strategy, the impact isn't going to happen positively or negatively overnight. It takes time. It may take years. It may take weeks. It may take months. It all depends on the kinds of information we're making available to the business, how and when. But there's a definite fact, though. Eventually, if you don't embrace the information inside your organization or the information available to it, the competitor will come along, they will embrace that information, they'll learn from your mistakes, and they will pass you in strategy and all other forms because they don't suffer from the same, we've always done it this way, that you may suffer as an organization. Keep in mind, startups and other organizations don't carry the baggage of the 30, 40, 50, 100-year-old company. So they're going to think differently, which is where as an information architect, it's important not only are you capturing and cultivating information, but you're providing it to your organization so they too can stay nimble and agile. So by embracing the fact that the world and all things on it are tangible and will change over time, you're one step closer to being an IA. Because one of the many tasks is to enable the business to embrace change, the information we make available, and by enabling information collection, flow, and storage, a feedback loop is naturally created by which everything in the organization can then move forward in a much more agile way. Unfortunately, as we know, it's very natural for humans to be resistant to change. So all of us had our favorite toy or blanket growing up. Unfortunately, the business has the same problems. It's the bad habits of making decisions based on the facts we used to presume to be true or things we used to believe to be true. And again, as information architects, what we need to do is bring to the table the facts that allow the business to see differently. Allow them to see data that's been collected through all the different channels as information. That's how we succeed. That's where the most successful companies come from. It's not just because they had a great business plan. It's not just because they had great business cases. It's because they captured the information and they saw a way to use it in a form that no one else did. And I saw a hand pop up there for just a second. If you do have any questions, comments, by all means, please raise your hand, and we're more than happy to pass the mic to you guys, because we do want this to be interactive. As we know, the best conversations that you can ever have, the best presentations, are when the audience probe in and force the presenters to address any topics at hand. So Scott, where have you seen some great examples of information strategy being used to the best of its ability? Because I know you have a vast experience through telecommunications and through retail, supply chain, and information's always been at the core of what you do.
One of the primary uses of information that's currently popular and people are trying to make do is understanding customer behavior and customer information based on information such as transactions that you have, interactions you've had with your customers, calls to support, emails that you received, and all this disparate, varied collection of stuff that a customer generates when they interact with your company. And you gather that up and you analyze it and try to understand customer preferences. You want to anticipate their needs. You want to deal with them in the way that they prefer. You don't want to make any serious mistakes in terms of sending somebody an email for a product that they've already rejected several times. So there's that kind of what it is you're trying to accomplish is understand that. That's one very popular is not really the right word, but it is. It accurately describes what's going on. There's a lot of companies that are trying to figure this out. Basic big data analytics, where you take a lot of social media information, you try to understand what people are saying about a topic. That's also part of information architecture. What the role of the architect in all this is to understand what information is available and how it can be used to answer questions, to turn that information into knowledge and even wisdom, which is the next level up, which we haven't covered. But you need to turn into, let's say, a customer set of transactions with your company. They bought a certain set of products over time. That's information. Knowledge is understanding and capturing that in terms of their preferences. So they prefer one brand over another. They prefer a certain kind of product over another. So they prefer to interact with you through email versus telephone. That's knowledge, and that can be used very powerfully. So that's where we're headed.
Perfect. So let's talk about that a little further here. So we know that information is out there. We know there's ways to capture it. As Scott put it perfectly, via email, phone calls, customer interactions, web statistics. Information has so many different ways it can come to us that a simple way to diagram it, as you can see on the slide here, is there's a channel. Insert any channel you choose, whether that, again, that's the web stats, the emails, the phone calls, customer interactions, direct interactions, scraping data, wherever it comes from. There's going to be channels out there. Now, when we surround that in a triangle of relevance to the customer, the cost of processing the data into information, and the exclusivity of the provider, this helps draw a picture for organizations of the value of the information. Because one of the most difficult parts for us as IAs isn't necessarily capturing the information. It may or may not be converting the information into a format that's usable by our customers, both internally and externally. The real challenge, though, is getting everyone on the same page that the information has value. So the actual value of information is often up for debate, especially with how readily it is made available due to portable network devices and the internet. But John Perry Barlow stated back in the 90s that information increases in value as it becomes more familiar, which is the opposite of physical things that have more value of scarce, which is kind of what makes it people's head hurts, because how can this information be so useful and so valuable if it's everywhere? Where when you think about the physical possessions, cars, houses, land, the less available it is, the more value it has. And that's an important fact, and that's something we have to take back to the organization and say, yes, this is available, but there's still value here because people want it, because people know that it exists, and because it is out there. So although it's important to note that scarcity of information can also create value in some cases, for example, when the founder of a secret benefits from knowing it, in the latter case, the value is highest closest to the secret being created, as for example, when the founder of a secret, for example, when competitors don't yet have reverse engineered the solution. So again, if you are the only person that has the information, for example, a secret missile plan, a secret plane, the next evolution in automotive, or whatever your industry may be, yes, that has value because you're the only one that can provide it and sell it. But that isn't the only way to get value. Because eventually, your competitors, they're going to reverse engineer it, they're going to catch up, they're going to see your product on the street, and they're going to also release their own. At that point, again, now the information becomes relevant to the consumer because more people are offering it, and now the value goes up because of that. And once it's been not only found in exclusive, but also made publicly available and relevant to the consumer, eventually the value now falls into the processing time. What does it cost you in comparison to others to take that raw data, transform it into information consumable, and that's where your ultimate long-term advantage of value and information is going to come. Now, the multipliers in this triangle here is time since first available. So again, if it's secret, the closer to the secret being found, the higher the value. And as the secret's been out there longer, it's going to diminish its value because, again, reverse engineering. Just as important, if not most important, out of all of these pieces is the quality and accuracy of the information. Because, again, having a bunch of information is great, but if there's no value because the quality and accuracy isn't there, for example, if you go peruse Google and you do a search, if the search results have no meaning, you stop using Google. If you go to an encyclopedia and the encyclopedia didn't validate its information in it, they just printed it, again, there's no value. So as an IA, here's a great diagram of how to go to your organization and present, okay, here's a spectrum of how we're bringing value to you. Does that make sense to everybody thus far? So let's talk about the challenge here.
I want to just let you know that I may drop off here. I'll be joining back up. So if you ask me, and I'm going to answer right away. I'm trying to get back on. So
perfect. Thanks, Scott. So let's talk about the challenge here. So we're starting to see where the value comes from. We're starting to see how to propose it back to the organization. We're starting to see that information is everywhere. But as an IA, in our opinion at Iasa, you ultimately are in the middle of all of the organization. Your job is not only to capture this information and massage it into a form that makes sense to everyone and help them find value in it, but it's also to ensure the bridges are created out to the management, the C-suite, the directors, the mid-level, operations, sales, business to business, business to customer, the web designers, the developers, the software engineers, the DBAs. Everyone in your organization can potentially be a customer of your information. And that's important to keep in mind because a lot of people, if you get stuck in the I'm just a DBA mode or I'm just whatever hat your title is strapped onto you has implied, you're missing the boat. Because when we're working with operations and sales and all the other customers, the way we ensure that they take full advantage of what we have to offer as IAs, and as we get into the hot trends and the hot topics here in just a second, this is really going to come clear because, again, even if we know what the latest and greatest technology is, if we can't sell that back to the business, then it doesn't matter that we know because they're not listening to us. So when we're trying to get these hot trends, these hot topics into their hands, here's a short bullet list of things we need to be keeping in mind as IAs. Ensure the information provided is tailored to the audience. Because again, if the information is not tailored, then it's just data. And if it's just data dumped into a spreadsheet or dumped into a database, if they're not technological advanced individuals, they're not going to be able to figure out how to massage the data into a form that makes it information and knowledge for them, and you just missed the boat. So again, as an IA, it's not just about collecting it, but it's about ensuring we show it in a form that makes sense. And keep your eyes open for reuse, because as we know, there's tons of ad hoc data hoarders and ad hoc data silos out there. It's the sales individual that has their customer database on their laptop in an Excel sheet that no one else has access to. It's the customer service individual who's answering via phone or via email and has all the information on sticky notes that no one else has access to. So in your organization, keep your eyes out as an IA for places that you can bring technology solutions to the table to make that information available. Because as the information becomes available, and as you remove the data silos and as you remove the ad hoc, now you can start applying the latest trends and latest tools and latest advancements so everyone can benefit from that information, not just that data hoarder or the data silo, if you will. And at the same time, be on the watch out for misuse, misstorage, lack of security. As an IA, it's not just about collect, massage, and toss back out there, but you also have to be cognizant that NPI, encodings, all the other security features do fall on you. Because remember, you're the champion of information. And last but not least, before we move on to the good stuff, keep in mind every customer is different. They have different needs, different expectations. And when we're working with these different people, again, whether it's operations, sales, executive staff, engineers, DBAs, make sure we're speaking in a language that makes sense to them. Because if you're talking above them or below them, they're going to glaze over, they're going to walk away, and they're going to miss the fact that you understand the latest trends, you have the latest deliverables. And again, having a cure for cancer but not delivering it to the table, you might as well not have a cure for cancer. The same is true for information architect. Having all the information in the world or having all the data in the world but not being able to communicate that to your organization so they can find value in it and apply it to the various channels that it could be used to distribute both internally and externally is a non-starter. So how do we do this as IAs? It's many people, you've probably seen this diagram over and over. It's all about users, content, and context. And merging those three pieces together, that's information architecture. So regardless if you're working in data modeling, if you're working in business processes, business intelligence, data warehousing, user interfaces, whatever you're doing, anywhere there's information, there's going to be a user. If there's not a user, there's no consumer. If there's no consumer, then what's the point of collecting the data? The content, again, is the data, it's the information, it's the knowledge, it's what we're delivering to them. And the context, which in many ways is the most important but the most forgotten, is again massaging that information into a shape, into a form that ensures everyone that looks at it understands it because it's in a place, a location, it's accessible, it's in a context that's meaningful and useful to them. You still there, Scott? You may be logging back in here. So I'm going to pause here for just a second while Scott gets back on. Is there any questions about where we're heading with this? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure as an IA, you're embracing all the data that's available to you, turning it into information, spreading it through the organization as knowledge, and along the way, being cognizant that your users are farther and more widespread than who you may think. The content is in more places than you may have thought previously to look. And the context is, again, the silver bullet that when you're communicating with these people, so when you're taking the same information, handing it to the sales team, and then massaging it to hand it to the operations team, it's still the same customer. It's still the same facts, but it's now in a format or a context that makes sense to them, which increases the value.
I'm here.
Those are far too quiet.
Yeah, they're either soaking this up or they're sleeping.
Hopefully soaking it up. So let's talk about the roles and skills required to be an IA. and Scott's going to push back on a little bit on this one, so I'll pre-warn you on this one, which should create a good, fun conversation here. So in my opinion, IAs have many, many hats. There's user interface designers, user experience designers, data warehousing, business intelligence, data security and privacy, metadata, taxonomy, knowledge management, and probably many other hats that you can lump into information architecture. The trick and the takeaway here, so the roles and skills you need to be successful as an IA are multifaceted. And in my opinion, to truly be successful, you can't pigeonhole yourself into just being one of these. To be good doing user interfaces, you need to understand user experiences. To be good in data warehousing, you need to understand the business intelligence. To understand data security, you need to get the privacy. To work with metadata, you need to create a taxonomy and utilize knowledge management systems to make those pieces available to the public. And the public could be internal to the organization, or it could be business to business or customers or broader. But the key here is, as an IA, you need to kind of have as many of these as possible. Ideally have a major, such as UI or data warehousing, and then have a minor that allows you to take that knowledge and take that experience and work with other teams. So if you have all the data in the data warehouse and you have the models as optimized and normalized as possible, that's great. But if you can't go to the UI folks or the UX folks or the security folks and say, hey, we have this information available, it's back to having that cure for cancer and not being able to tell anybody. As an IA, don't box yourself into just one role or one skill set, because then again, if you do, you're missing the bigger impact you could have throughout your organization. I'm not saying as a data warehousing expert, you need to be a user interface expert, but have enough understanding that says, okay, I have this huge amount of information here. Am I exposing it through various interfaces? Am I exposing this via mobile? Am I exposing this to the intranet? Am I exposing this to reporting? And think, are there places where I can make this information available beyond just the database? And the same thing with user interface and user experience folks is, don't just think pretty designs, think navigation, think labeling. Don't just think of how to get the information into the physical consumer's hands, but think when you're collecting or potentially going to collect information, you're creating forms, you're collecting web stats of page flows, logic flows, user flows through the site. Think when you're laying those things out, what might I want to store? What might I want to data mine later? And that's going to allow you to feed your data warehousing folks or your miner to ensure when having those conversations, you don't have great UIs, great user experiences, but then toss all the data on the floor and never mine it for other purposes. So what other roles and skills do you see required as an IA, Scott? I might have lost him, son.
No, I'm here. I just have to find the mute button. You covered it pretty well. There's some controversy in the business about whether or not user experience is truly information architecture. However, there's certainly an information architecture component to user interface design in the terms of organizing how information is presented and how the customer interacts or how the user interacts with the system. There are other aspects to user interface design that aren't technically information architecture, but that's an ongoing discussion and really isn't terribly relevant to your activities as an architect. What you're trying to do is organize, in all cases, organize information for a purpose. And you need to understand the purpose and then translate that into what information is required and what information you have, and present it in such a way that it's relevant. And that really is a nutshell. In all aspects and all of these categories that Tom mentioned, that's really what you're doing. And so, again, the main skill is understanding problems. What do people need to know? What are they asking? What are they really asking? Not just what they're saying. to the root of the issue, you may have some troubleshooting skills that you require to dig under and find some root causes as to what people are really after. You also have situations where your customers or your business is not really understanding what it is. They don't know. There's some uneasy feeling that they don't know something, or they're not aware of something, and you may have to help them through that to figure out that it might be some piece of information that they have that they didn't know about, or some understanding of data that they have that they didn't know about. And so there's a fair amount of troubleshooting involved in this as well. Fundamentally, all architects are troubleshooters by nature. That skill happens to be basic to everything that we do, no matter what your topic. And I think Tom hit it right on the head when you need to be a primary skill in one of these areas, and secondary in one or more others, and I would emphasize the or more. But your primary skill is troubleshooting and understanding what people are trying to tell you when they're not saying what they're supposed to, what they need to tell you. So with that, Tom, I'll let you have it back. You're doing very well, so keep at it.
So where again, I don't want to dwell on this too long because we have a limited amount of time. We haven't got to the good fun stuff yet. Thank you for your patience, folks. So we've laid the groundwork for where we're heading with this. So where I get a little antsy on the user experience side, just very briefly, is focus groups and managing the collection of data as an information architect and pulling it out of those individuals sitting in front of the product or the screen, interacting with your UI, gathering their facial expressions, gathering their comments, and then turning that information, the hidden gems, into something that can be tossed back to the engineering team, and that's where I kind of lean towards UX being IA. But again, different topic, different day. But in the back of your minds, when you're building UIs as an IA, think, you know what? I can use my same testing skills, my same ability to question the customer to get to the root cause, to not only build a better design, but also to analyze the responses to users using that design. So now let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into the hottest trends in the industry and how we continue to grow as architects. There's three major forces that impact the future regardless of which industry you're working in, and especially in information architecture. Those three huge impacts: number one, technology. Technology changes continuously. All of us know that. If we go back a handful of years, we didn't have iPhones and iPads. We go back a little bit farther, we didn't have the internet. Go back a little bit farther, we didn't have computers. But there's always been technology. There's always been a machine, and there's always been technology that keeps advancing. The exciting part for us is it's going faster than ever. The second part that drives and impacts the future is the economy. Like it or not, it takes money to drive technology. And last but not least, and even more so ever now than before, with everything being interconnected via social media, social networking, the internet, it's society. So when you take technology, the economy, and society, toss them in a blender, that's what's going to impact the future, and that's what's going to drive the future trends. Now, when we're talking about technological forces...
I want to break on here and add something else. The other side of technology is, and something that is particular to information architecture, is the understanding or our ability to analyze and categorize information. To follow the history of library science, for example, in terms of cataloging techniques and organizing information to make it available, that is also, you might call it the softer side, but it's also a technology in the sense that it's an understanding of a discipline and a better way of doing things. And as information architects in particular, you need to keep up with that side of the business as well.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And also on the technology side, it's scaling issues. You know, big data, what we're going to touch on here for a while, is just, again, there's so much information out there at this point that even if we capture all of it, how do we work with it? How do we make sense of it? Where do we make sense of it? Why do we make sense of it? Or do we just capturing more and more terabytes of information, or excuse me, terabytes of data that sits on a hard drive somewhere that never becomes information? And in time, big data is going to be replaced with big information. You know, you're already seeing IBM and Watson make this transition for us. You know, we've seen them on Jeopardy. We've seen the computer beat man. We've seen it in a closed system with, I couldn't even quote the number of bytes that it stored, but we know that IBM via Watson is already taking data, turning it into information, and making serendipitous connections to solve questions at hand. They're actively using it in the medical field. They're heading into the financial world, and it's just a matter of time before other industries find ways to follow suit with big data. And again, big data is going to go away, and it's going to become big information because it's going to change into a way that actually makes sense. Because again, ones and zeros does you no good. We all can have infinite hard drives. We all can have infinite cloud computing. We can keep storing this stuff forever. But as information architects, we need to get the business to stop saying big data and get them to start saying big information. Because again, collecting is good, sharing is better. And where this is going to go is, again, it's going to be the Watson. It's going to be the NoSQLs. It's going to be the Solars, the Lucines. It's finding ways inside of your organization to, again, as we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes or so, not just talk about data, but talk about how we can turn this into information, who we can sell this to. And that's a key point. Information has value. And not only can you sell it internally to your stakeholders, you can commoditize it and sell it externally. We've been seeing this with mailing lists, addresses forever. It's just a matter of time before someone comes along, potentially you on this call, that finds a way to take the big data, all those ones and zeros on all your hard drives and in the cloud, and turn them into information, relabel it big information, and have whatever the next Watson is. Because as IBM's doing with Watson, they're already using the system as a medical assistant for doctors, that they feed in the problem into the system, and it says, okay, based on the information you gave us, here's a handful of potential causes or potential solutions, where it would have taken a doctor a vast amount of time to go through the previous experience or the experience of their comrades and their colleagues to get to the same thing. What are some examples you've seen, Scott, recently with big data and how it's going to turn into big information?
Well, the thought that came to mind was that an episode of House, or something like House MD, where his staff is actually Watson, because they're trying to figure out, based on a collection of symptoms, what possible diagnoses might affect and might present those symptoms. And that's something that a big data can do very well.
So I think the trick is for you on the call, and for all IAs with that matter, is continue the path of where IBM and Watson have gone, and take all those ones and zeros we've been collecting, again, the terabytes or beyond of data, start calling it what it is, call it data, and start looking for places you can turn it into information. And look for ways to create algorithms, processes, shape it into context that empowers your consumers internally and externally, and then just as IBM's doing with Watson, commoditize that and start selling it. Because Watson is just the beginning of commoditization of big data. And I think we're going to see a lot more as hard drives get cheaper, as computer science becomes more commonplace, and as engineering makes way to architecture, and as architects, especially information architects, bring to the business table a way of thinking differently, and as the business starts embracing spending money on R&D, such as IBM did with Watson, and as we begin to continuously show value in the data as it turns into information, again, I would argue for long periods of time, big data is going to go away, and it's going to be replaced with the word big information. Because, again, data is worthless. It's only valuable when it's taken to our users as content in a context that makes sense. So the next fun topic that we're probably seeing trending, and hopefully you've seen trending as well, is MDM, or Master Data Management. This is where you're taking all of your customer information, or all of your information, whatever it may be, and putting it into one data warehouse, killing all those data silos, getting rid of the associate sitting at the front desk typing into the Excel sheet who then forwards it out via email to everyone in the company and hoping people update it on a regular basis. So MDM, speaking again back from the data warehousing side, is the centralization of all of your customers. And the reason this is really hitting home right now is as organizations continue to cut to the bone and continue to have layoffs and the recession continues to impact us around the globe, as we as architects, as we as employees of organizations are required to do more with less, the only way we're going to efficiently do it is to have all that information in one spot, because ultimately it allows us to know our customers better. And back to those earlier slides of where I said, as an IA, your customer is not just whoever you're touching as a DBA anymore, or whatever role you're playing. Your customer is literally every single individual in your organization. And finding a way to take that data in that data warehouse, in that MDM, and massage it into a way that's usable by your team, your sales team, the financial team, the engineer, the developers, the network engineers, making it so everyone now has that big data being utilized as big information in a centralized repository to touch your customers more efficiently. Because again, doing more with less is fine and dandy and looks great on paper, but the reality is one of two things are going to suffer. A, your customer service is going to fail because your people are overworked and they're not able to touch the customers as frequently and as efficiently as you would like. Or B, your people are going to fail because they're going to try to continue to touch your people, or excuse me, touch your customers with the same level of top-notch 5-star customer service while trying to manage all those spreadsheets, all the different data silos, trying to stay up to date on what's the current information. And keep in mind, when we say information, it's everything. It could be responses to RFPs. It could be service level agreements. It could be contracts. It could be trends. It could be your web stats. It could be your customer information. There is no limit to the amount of things that can be lumped together into this master data management in big information piles. And as IAs, we need to be steering organization to this. We need to be getting everyone in the organization to buy in that we need to make a centralized repo or repository of everything. We've been doing this for a long time on our internal intranets. You know, we've been dumping all the HR information, all the offices into one spot. We pop up SharePoints, wikis. All these things are prime examples of master data management. But what we need to do is go to the next step. We need to get the wiki plus the intranet merged into one, or make sure the wiki is part of your intranet. There are many locations throughout your organization where you have redundant data. And master data management isn't just about popping up a data warehouse. It's about popping up a single entity for all information, for all data, and then ideally having that centralized repository morph the data into a context that makes sense to the users regardless of how they get there, whether it's mobile device, the intranet, their tablet PCs, printed reports, documents, whatever it may be, or back in the IBM Watson case, the response is coming back to the doctors. Again, it only works if we as IAs are cognizant that everything in our organization is information, it is data, and needs to be centralized in order to work smarter and work more efficiently.
The only thing I would add to this is that often the data warehouse is not physical. It's not a physical collection of data where you gather all your application data and merge it into one place. Sometimes it's virtual, and master data management tools work both virtually and physically.
Absolutely.
I'm going to enter into a tunnel here, and I'm going to lose you, and I probably won't get you back. So it's been I want to just say my goodbyes at this point and say it's been a pleasure, and I'll hang on as long as I can, but it's yours from here on out.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. So another place I see is heading in MDM, and this is something I've been doing for a couple years, is you get that centralized data warehouse of whatever your core information is. We'll just talk customers for a second because although we all have a different concept of what a customer is, let's just stay academic for just a second. Regardless what your model of a customer is, imagine all that customer data, just the customer data, the phone numbers, the addresses, their names, faxes, emails, etc. All of the true customer data. We're not talking transaction, we're not talking application data, we're just talking customer data. I foresee all of that customer data dropping into your DW, into your data warehouse. Now, what I see coming next, and what I've been doing for a couple of years, is now, as you need to spin up new applications, because we all know every organization has someone in the business saying, hey, we need to add this new feature, we need to add this new portal, we need to add this new way of getting to that data. Where it makes our heads spin, for those of us who do data modeling, is, you know what, this is going to destroy my DW. I can't add this concolostomy bag or just add this extra set bolted onto my pristine DW so you can have this portal. So what I think is going to happen, and again what I've been doing for a while, is you keep your DW pristine, but then you add on a data silo that pulls all the customer data from, actually let me rephrase this, it relates the customer data from the DW into your app, but it doesn't store the customer data in your app. So rather, your app databases or your app silos, your app DMs, only store the transaction data. They only store the information absolutely pertinent for your portal or your new app, while storing the MDM or the customer still in the DW. And what that allows you to do is it gives you a wheel. It gives you the MDM in the center of the wheel with spokes going out to your silos or your app silos to be able to spin up those extra needs as they happen. And what that's going to allow us to do is, as information architects, is it allows us to keep our MDM consistent. It allows us to keep it concentrated. It allows us to keep it pristine. But it allows us to bring on solutions to these other problems and requests as they come without disconnecting those apps from the centralized customer, and at the same time without defeating the purpose of MDM, which is do not, shall not, cannot, will not, must not store customer data in two locations. So I see that as happening and coming more prevalently in the future. Because again, far too many of us have worked in organizations where we'll have 16 apps, 20 apps, 50 apps, 100 apps, whatever the number is. It's never one. It's always multiple. And they always have the same customer information in multiple locations. One goes stale because the customer calls into the customer service desk who updates the app. It's not updated in the accounting system. It's not updated in some other system. All of a sudden they're out of sync. We're billing our customer at the wrong address, or whatever the issue may be, and we're doing them a disservice back to we have to do more with less people. So again, by having that hub mechanism, or by having your core DW with all your customer information, your business data in one spot, your classic data warehousing we've always been doing for a long, long time, but by attaching your apps, or your data marts if you prefer, that contain just app data, you can spin up infinite app silos and continue to service the organization with whatever portal they choose without disrupting the pristine nature of your DW. last but not least, I know we're getting short on time here, and of course we'll open up for Q&A here before we go, for those of you that can stay on long. The next one, of course, is the HTML5 for the UI folks. We're seeing jQuery become JMobile. We're seeing Flash, of course, slowly dying a not-so-silent death as devices like the iPhones, iPads refuse to support it. But as UI designers, as information architects in the design domain, and again, don't get stuck on that word design. I'm not, because again, architecture is not just design. But for those of us in that world of UI, UX, it's going to keep being HTML5. And if you haven't embraced it, you're going to have to, because it's going to be here for a long, long time. Yes, it's not a standard yet. Yes, it's going to take a while. Everyone's going to have, it's going to be back to the 90s all over again, of where you have Netscape versus IE versus. Every browser is going to support HTML5 a little bit differently, and we're going to be special coding as user interface designers to work across all the different platforms. But the reality is we're just going to have to bite the bullet and jump on the bandwagon. So what do you think is coming next? Well, I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I'd go buy a lotto ticket and retire early. But again, as I mentioned at length, I really think big data is going to go away. And I think information architects, as they get seats at the business table and as they become more prevalent and more heard, and as NoSQL and things of that nature become more commonplace. Again, we already see it in places like Netflix and many other organizations where they're saying, I have so much information, but I don't want to pay the license of SQL, I don't want to pay the license of Oracle, and they're going the NoSQL free licensing path. As the big data becomes more accessible and as the cost of making that data becomes less prohibitive, I really think big data is going to become big information. And I think as information architects translate the data into context and content for the users, again, it's going to become big information in the foreseeable future. Again, and it's here to stay. It's going to be around for a long time. But I do see that's this wheel and spoke mechanism going to become more prevalent in terms of, again, keep your data warehouse pristine, keep your core business data in one DW, and then add silos referencing back into that data so you're not mirroring your customers, you're not mirroring your core data, which allows you to spin up multiple apps without destroying the accuracy and integrity of that data. And again, HTML5 is going to be here for a while for the UI folks. So how do you stay ahead of the curve, and how do you continue to grow your career? There's a handful of paths. From Iasa's perspective, we say get certified, get trained. What you've seen today is a very small portion of what we cover in the IFC, the Iasa Foundation course and certification. There were literally a couple slides literally lifted out of our IAC, the associate course and certification. We have information architecture. It's in-person is a 40-hour crash course. For those of you that have, we'll call it 5 to 7 years experience as professional IAs, it will level the playing field as we've based on what we've done today and add another 39 hours to it. For those of you that have been in industry for a long time, you're confident in your skills, we highly recommend you go the path of the CIDP. The CIDP is the Certified IT Architect Professional. So again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I have a very strong gut feeling that says just as doctors, lawyers, and engineers have been certified via board exams for a long, long time, it's only a matter of time that as architects, regardless if it's information, software, enterprise, infrastructure, business, or whatever other title you slap yourself with or your organization slaps you with, it's just a matter of time that some architect somewhere is going to make a bad design, and there's going to be a lawsuit, and it's going to be state regulated, internationally regulated, that they have to be certified and they have to pass a board exam. We see this in professional engineers in the U.S. on a regular basis. You want to construct a bridge, you want to assemble a skyscraper, you want to build something that has people's lives in your hands, you need to prove and be certified that you are qualified to sign off on this design. And again, in my opinion, without a crystal ball, it's just a matter of time before architects including IAs, are required to be certified. So if you're ahead of the curve, it just means you're set up for when it's required, you're pre-qualified, you're pre-certified, and you're already there to sign the documents and sign the designs. Not only that, is going through these courses, going through the certifications. I've been teaching them for a while. I've attended them as well, just so I can speak to what I've seen taught. And I've never seen an individual come out of one of these courses, regardless if it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years experience, that didn't walk away saying, wow, I never thought about it that way. And yes, some of it's going to be review, but there's always going to be something new, because as we know, technology doesn't stop changing. And even more importantly, all of us work for an organization. Even if we're consultants, we have a limited number of organizations we work for. And we get stuck in that we've always done it this way mindset. What this training and certification does is it forces you to think outside of the box. It forces you to see things in a different light, and most importantly, it exposes you to other ways of thinking that other organizations are doing. So some of the most powerful usefulnesses of these training certifications comes out of the peer conversations that occur during the classes. Second on the list, how to keep growing. Again, if you already know where you want to go, you have very specific skill sets you want to improve or hone, jump onto the Iasa mentorship program. I've done it myself. I actually got partnered with Grady Booch, who is the chief scientist at IBM. He's one of the co-founders of UML, the Unified Markup Language. That's where a lot of the Watson information came from this afternoon, morning and evening, depending where you're at. Again, there are rock stars that you have the opportunity to be partnered with some of the brightest thought leaders in industry, in your domain, including information architecture. So if you're already certified, or if you're not looking for a classroom environment or even a virtual classroom environment, you want more of a one-on-one, do your research on the Iasa mentorship program. Great people out there, and they will cater to your needs and help you get to where you want to go. Because again, although an organization is nothing without the people make an organization, and if the people, such as ourselves, don't stay up to date, up to trends, and engage and stay informed on what's going on outside of our organizations, then really we're going to be bypassed by those that chose to look outside of organizations. Last but not least, for those of you that are already approaching that thought leader or looking for collaboration, looking for ways to be involved with other colleagues around the world, around your state, your country, your region, contribute to local and global community. Jump into a local Iasa chapter, reach out to the Board of Education, reach out to me at the Board of Chapters and Membership, and we will partner you up with like-minded individuals who want to continue to grow the profession. Because as I mentioned very recently, it's just a matter of time before certification becomes required. And again, maybe that's 10 years, maybe that's 50 years, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 3. I don't know the number. But I know that as technology becomes more and more part of our daily lives, it's just a matter of time before we have to become certified. Because think about the systems on an airplane. Think about the systems on a space shuttle. Think about the electronic systems that are becoming parts of our automotives. Our lives depend on those vehicles. If an architect makes a bad design or doesn't follow the quality attributes to the T that need to satisfy the needs of those systems, one of them's going to fall out of the sky, one of them's going to go off the road. And yes, there's regulators to ensure to the best of their ability that things go as planned, but as we know, there's always something new technologically they don't know how to test yet. And that's where architects come in, is we test things and we poke holes and ask the tough questions that other people don't know or how to realize. So Brian asked the question, will I be involved in the ISC training in Seattle later this year? I will teach the information architecture one. Potentially will teach the software one. Scott Whitmire, who was on the call earlier, actually would teach the business one. So from the information perspective, I actually co-wrote it with a woman named Andrea Seifer, who's an architect at Microsoft, who also sits here in Seattle. So the short answer is yes, likely will be involved in information one, possibly software. And for those of you that go via the business one, the business IAC, I want to say starts June 26th online. So for those of you that are looking for a way to further embrace the business, please jump into Scott's class. Very bright man. He came from a background, an MBA, or not an MBA, I think it was an MBA in, started with accounting, going into MBA, and then eventually into computer science. So he's very grounded in the business and the financial side, but through his vast experience has also picked up enterprise architecture, software architecture, information architecture, and all the other things you could have. Ashok asked, can I share the presentation? Absolutely. I'll make sure to get this out to the team at Iasa, and you can have the slide deck for your purposes. Of course, they can reject that, but I'm pretty sure there's no issue with that. Any other questions around what we talked about today? Again, the mentorship program, getting involved with the Board of Education, your local chapters, Board of Chapters and membership. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, hesitate to reach out to Scott, or Iasa directly, and we're more than happy to help you to continue to grow and empower you for success going forward. So as the bottom says, and it really is true, only you can decide where to go next. We as information architects, in my opinion, hold the business in our hands because we're one of the few people in the organization that has the breadth and depth across the entire organization to know what's really going on. The software, be careful, I don't want to say this incorrectly, the software developers, the network engineers, the accountants, the business folks, they have competence and expertise far beyond what we'll ever gain in their exact domain, but to be very clear, they're in a stovepipe. They get the software, they get the accounting, they get the sales, they get the operations, but they think in that mindset, where we as information architects, because we're building these bridges across the organization, because we know what information is available from all those different domains, we can glue it back together and then share it with the other groups and empower everyone in the organization to work more efficiently than they previously thought was possible. So Sermaine's got a question. Are the classes available via virtual or physical or both? Both. We've been teaching the foundation course, which we highly recommend for anyone that's not gone through it, both virtually online. The next course is coming up here in about 2 to 3 weeks. I want to say it starts June 26th. The business architecture course is available online as well. It's also starting June 26th. We do offer physical ones for all the associate courses, the foundation course. Those, along with the virtual courses, can be found on the ASA website. And for the information architecture course, the first one, of the pilot program, will be offered this September online. So for those of you that are strapped for budget, you can't get the 40 hours off from work, which again is back to we're all doing more with less. We all know that organizations will say, yes, here's the training budget, you are covered for your tuition, and then they turn around and say, but you're so valuable we can't afford to leave for a week. So that's where the virtual courses are great. So the virtual courses are usually, the foundation is spread across 8 weeks. It's 3 hours a day, twice a week. Depending on what your time zone, we try to accommodate them the best of our ability. The associate courses are online in a 6-week format. Again, twice a week, 3 hours a day. So you work by day, ideally, you attend class 3 hours by night, or you take a long lunch break and attend the class, and then you're there the other 5 hours. We've had great success in both the online and the physical classes. They both have pros and cons. The nice part of the online classes is it teaches you and empowers you how to further collaborate around the globe with not only different cultures, but different organizations that you'd never otherwise be able to associate with. The online or the physical courses are great because you get that physical in-class camaraderie of going to lunch, sharing time before class, sharing time after class, and it's really a matter of how you like to work. Everyone works differently. Everyone learns differently. The pro also of the virtual class is it's slower. Because it's spread over 8 weeks, it gives you a lot of time to consume the information, think about the questions you want to ask, and then have email conversations or direct conversations via the webinar. Where the on-site class is very compact and very quick. So if you're a quick learner, you have no patience for things going slow. And I'm not saying the online course is slow, but again, 5 days crash course is hold on to your seat, we're going to fly through this content, and we're going to give you a lot really quickly. Where the online one, in 3-hour increments, gives you a lot of time to go to work the next day and put into direct use what you learned that day or that week. Any other questions? You guys have been a great group. I highly am excited about the information architecture course that's coming up here again in September. Hopefully, if I haven't seen you already, I'll see you in a foundation core course sometime in the near future. And eventually Site IP. Again, I want to see you guys in that boardroom. I want to see you guys with Site IP designation. And because not only does it make you feel great about yourself, standing in front of a board of your peers, and it literally is a board of your peers. It's 4 individuals from unrelated organizations, including one not from yours, where you have to, through a 2-3 hour presentation, explain to them why you are an architect. And the important part of the Site IP, it's not technology attached. It's not you have to be a .NET developer to be a software architect. It's not you have to know SQL to be an information architect. It's not you need to know any particular technology. It's a technology agnostic certification because as a professional engineer, you shall walk into any organization and given an appropriate amount of time, bring value in the role you've been certified as. So as an information architect, you should walk into any organization around the world and immediately help them understand master data management, help them understand collection of data, get rid of the data silos, help them realize value in the information they have they may not have realized they had, or as a software architect, walk into any industry and say, okay, you know what, here's how to improve your software development lifecycle. Here's how to control feature creep. Here's how we can work on versioning. Here's how we can better negotiate scope, or many of the other roles that we cover. So Ryan asked, is the session be replayed? The session is recorded. I will try to make the deck available. Again, I need to get approval from Iasa on making the deck available, but the session absolutely is been recorded. It will be made available probably in the next 3 to 7 days.
And Tom, I'll just add to that. We will be uploading the presentation to the Iasa website, and I hope to accomplish that by the end of the day today.
Oh, great, even faster. I love it. And again, we can't stress enough, please continue to contribute to the profession, because the only way we're going to get to certification being required, the only way we're going to get to having architects be a household name is for us to continue to spread the word. We all know what a lawyer is. We all know what a doctor is. No one will dispute what a lawyer or doctor does. But when you say architect, how many of you literally have had your friends, family, fellow colleagues, and even in your own organization say, so you design buildings? Or so what do you do? And the reason is because we're still a very young profession. We're still getting off the ground in terms of, because if you think of medicine, it's been here for longer than we can talk about. Lawyers has always been people defending the rights of others. but architecture, the principles of working with the business, not just in design, but through all the pillars, the human dynamics, the IT environment, the business technology strategy, the design, and the quality attributes, the 5 pillars we deem that all architects need. Until that is understood by all architects, until they're practicing it, and until they're communicating with the organization to the utmost ability, and until they're no longer living in the ivory tower of creating these ultimate life-changing, world-changing, high-impact designs that never see the light of day because they don't know how to inform the business that they designed it, or worse, they design it but doesn't match the actual problem at hand, architecture will still remain in its infancy. And that does no one any good because, again, as architects, as we talked about in great depth today, we have the ability to empower the business to go to the next level. You know, again, think of the Grady Booches in the world. Imagine if he didn't engage on UML, or didn't engage in object-oriented programming, or didn't assist with the Watson project. It's hard to say how much longer it would be before we are where we are today. And as architects, every one of us has the opportunity to become the next thought leader. We all are wired differently. We all think differently. It's just a matter of time before we get there. Any other questions? I know we're running about 18 to 20 minutes late, but again, you've been a great audience. If there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and close out the session. If there are questions, I'm more than happy to stay on a little bit longer and answer them. Again, as Elizabeth stated, the session has been recorded. It will be posted on the Iasa website. Just as importantly, information about the mentorship program, information about IFC classes, both virtual and physical, all the associate programs, the site IP, can all be found on iasahome.org. Or, again, don't hesitate to email us, and we'd love to put you in connection with the Board of Education, the Board of Chapters of Membership, or your local chapter leaderships to get you contributing on a bigger level.
And I'd like
everyone's silent, so I'm assuming you clocked out. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to thank everyone for their attendance, and thank you, Tom, for your insights and a wonderful presentation, and we're grateful to Scott as well. And yeah, we'll go ahead and close out. If you do have more questions, you can feel free to email us. I'm going to send out an email to everyone later today with the link to the recording and also the slide download. So you can go ahead and respond to that email with any questions. You can also visit us online at www.isaglobal.org, and we'll be reaching out to you all shortly. We hope you have a great day.
Elizabeth, can you also include the link to the mentorship program and the class registration page, please?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Because I had a lot of questions, direct chat, of people asking how to get to those links, and we want to make sure and empower them to get that information so they get registered for these classes, get signed up for the mentorship, and take full advantage of what Iasa has to offer, because there really is a huge wealth of information here, and the network is immense. I can't stress enough the number of organizations and the number of people that are beginning to become more involved. And again, we'd like to see you more involved as well.